And today we are joined by Eric and Steve from Uihlein Media, who are going to be showing us the Endless Mission. Hello guys, how are you doing?
Doing well, yourself?
Yeah, very well, thank you. This is our first session of the day. It's all very exciting.
I can't wait for it to go horribly wrong.
Breaking new ground. What have you got to show us?
We've got a game called The Endless Mission, which is one of the games that we're working on and that we're just demoing here at Rezzed.
Exciting. Should we jump
Yeah,
straight
let's jump
in?
into it. To give you kind of an idea of what The Endless Mission is, The Endless Mission is an open world sandbox creation game. We wanted to empower players to have an understanding of what it is that goes into game making and actually be able to make their own games with their friends, share them out with the world, as well as get pulled into a meta-narrative that takes you behind the scenes of games.
Right.
So we've got some story here. What Eric is doing now is summoning up what is our essentially central hub world of the game. We're calling this the terminal. And so as you take it, as players go and venture inside the terminal, what they're going to experience is a multiplayer gathering area. So
Right.
you'll be able to play socially with your friends, talk with them, interact with them, and then play through several of our genre games as well. Genre games being classic things like a kart racer, an RTS, a platformer. While they're there and playing those games, they have the ability then to actually go and modify them, change them,
Oh, right.
and interact with them in all kinds of ways. So I think Eric right now is going to jump into the portal that is takes him to the real-time strategy game. So one of the things that's notable about the Endless Mission is that every game has its own collective art style.
Right.
So you'll notice in the RTS, when it loads up, we're looking at an art style that is very much in the voxel style. So
Oh, okay.
cubes, pixels, all that fun kind of great stuff. Now, and our platformer is a little bit more cartoony. Our kart racer is set in like a future sci-fi city.
Right.
All of these assets are available to the player. So once they play through something like this, they have the opportunity then to take those art assets and actually create their own games.
Right,
And so
so-
they're not locked into one thing.
So was this something, this could be built within the game itself?
This can be built within the game itself. So Uihlein Media is going to be providing a lot of different game genres for people to mess with, and we'll be like unveiling new genres every so often as well.
Right.
But also a big part of the Endless Mission is going to be the user-generated content.
Right.
And so you'll have the ability then to share this out with the world and have people, your friends, anybody else playing your game, adding to it, modifying it, changing it in any way. So right now this plays like a basic RTS. So Eric is sending out his knights and his archers to go find the undead army that is somewhere up top as it's revealed with the fog of war. The game itself, we came around because we were talking with a company by the name of Endless Studios, whose mission was to put non-internet enabled laptops into developing countries, and they wanted a game that was going to teach people how to code and how to program.
Right.
One of the elements of this, beyond modifying, and we'll show this a little bit later on in the demo, is the ability then to actually go in and manipulate the code itself. We call it hacking as a mechanic.
Right.
And so by playing through the storyline of this particular game, and then there is that big meta-narrative that we mentioned earlier, users are going to have an idea as to how to code in Unity and C# language in order to craft their own mechanics.
But how have you kind of like given that a kind of skin to kind of make people understand
We've
it
kind
better?
of given it a skin as well as tutorialized it, so we're walking you basically from point A to point B. Like myself, I'm just the marketing guy. I don't necessarily know how to code or make games. I can talk for a living, that'll be fine. But what we are looking at then is, if you play through it, you're at least going to have a basic understanding, not just of video game mechanics and what goes into making a good game, but actually how to go do it yourself.
Right.
Uihlein's big thing is we want people to understand and the technology that's around them and be able to manipulate it versus being manipulated by it.
Right.
And so that was one of our kind of like founding visions, and this game kind of speaks very directly to that.
And as a teaching method, you think giving people a kind of a more sort of finished version of the game and then letting them tweak elements of it or kind of
Absolutely.
work back from a finished
Right.
element is
We
the
did-
way to teach.
We see a lot of people that like want to get into video game making, and particularly here at a place like Rezzed, there's a lot of indie devs, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of people walking around who are like, how do I get into game making, and like, what is something I was interested in? This is a consumer product first. We want people to have fun. We want people to explore the narrative. We want people to have a great time with it, but we also want people to take a little bit more away from it than just like, oh, I had a good time with it. It's I might now be more comfortable shifting, manipulating, changing things in its own right.
Right.
And so one of the things that we can do now, Eric is engaged with the enemies, is that we can jump into what we call modding, and it's a light skin and overlay. So this is sort of like the basic components of what make up the modding within the endless mission. So you can select all these different kind of components. So he's got his archers, he can look at the stats, the attack, he can up the attack damage, he can up their range.
Right.
He can do all kinds of things that kind of either make the battle more difficult for him or easier for him based on how he's feeling.
Right.
And then save those changes and share them out to his friends. So if he's discovered a combination that would be kind of fun to do, so are you making him tiny?
No, making him the same size but extremely overpowered.
Okay.
But we can make the knights a little bit bigger.
Yeah, let's make the knights a little bit bigger and we can actually see what some of the scaling that exists within this. And so this is all being done in a real runtime compiler. So we have built a compiler into the program
Right.
that it is all live.
Oh, okay.
And so it takes no time. So I want you.
So you can program in your own easy mode if you
can
want.
program in your own easy mode if you want to.
Nice.
But then you have to have like understanding.
yeah.
And so now our knights are huge and they are ridiculously overpowered and they will make short work of the enemies. It is fun to point out that the exploding voxel boxes that we see going on now was entirely something we didn't do intentionally. It was just in the game. It was a bug.
Oh, right.
But it's a super satisfying way to watch voxels pop. And so we've left it in the game after multiple iterations. It's just kind of stayed.
Be victorious. It was an empty victory, though, I feel.
Yeah, it was a little hollow in its execution.
Yeah.
One of the things that you can go into, can you jump into the terminal? Or
Yeah.
no, sorry, not the terminal, or the editor. We'll show that.
Yeah, we can do that.
Take a peek. So within the terminal itself is actually where Uihlein, we can take a little quick tour around. Uihlein will be curating a lot of the games that come in.
Right.
So Eric is our community manager. He's going to be putting out weekly, monthly community challenges that's saying like, hey, make an RTS. Hey, make a platformer, make something of those ilk and lines. And then they'll be able to be featured here by Uihlein staff.
Oh, I see.
So that's what we call sort of the Hall of Celebration at the moment.
And are the games, are they always made within the genres you've supplied?
No, you can make anything. So if we really wanted to, you could actually take, so say we have a platformer, kart racer, and RTS.
Yeah.
You could take sort of like the scene, the gameplay, and the mechanic from each of those things. And so you could put you can have a kart that needs to complete a platformer in the world of the RTS.
Oh, I see, right.
So like you have the ability to kind of scramble and make anything that you possibly want. To the point where if you're manipulating the code as much as you can within the game, you could even be making like machinima and things like that. Like you can do your own movies, animation. Unity is a super powerful tool. And so you can kind of exploit that to be whatever it is that you want it to be. You can even import your own assets as well as assets from like the Steam store or something like that.
Right, oh, that's cool.
So we want to bring up the editor real quick?
Yeah.
All right.
Is this what it's really like behind the scenes of game development? Is it a gleaming palace full of
It's-
wonder and polish?
I mean, it's a lot more cans of LaCroix and sparkling fizzy waters. But yeah, this is what our offices in Arizona is like.
Yeah.
I promise. So right now we're looking at sort of the editor. Not even sort of the editor. This is the editor. The basic layers and levels of this are going to be drag and drop.
Right, okay.
As simple as possible. So we want people to be able to manipulate the environment, the scenes, much like you saw within the modding, in a user-friendly way. And so this is, if anybody has ever fiddled around with Unity, or even if you've been in builder mode in Minecraft, you should be familiar with dragging and dropping and all the changes. And again, this is a live runtime compiler.
Wow.
So it's a good time.
No, it's interesting because I always feel, particularly we've been setting up for this stream and everyone's been coming in showing us their builds and you see, things maybe aren't working in places and then they'll just bring up a window and start tapping away and fix it instantly and you feel sort of so dumb within this sort of hobby which, is full of kind of sort of wonderment.
And that's the thing is, and we all love gaming. Like we've all been playing for years and years and years now. And so like, what does it look like behind the scenes? And so if we actually build that mechanic into it, you can get a better understanding of what it takes to go into making a game. And that it's not an overly intimidating process. It's something that with some practice and some skill that anybody can really be good at. We have an intern in our office a couple months ago that took our kart racer and turned it into a flight simulator.
Oh, right, wow.
Just by messing around with it, changed the gravity in the karts, and he was zooming around, and we'd never seen that before.
Yeah.
We were at a convention last year, and we had somebody who manipulated one of the parameters of the avatar and turned it into basically like a Paper Mario.
Oh, okay.
And so we started developing puzzles for that. So if your avatar can't fit through this particular spot, how do you conquer that?
Yeah.
And so you can turn them really thin. You can turn them into paper Mario. You can go in and you can manipulate the blocks to be further apart. You can do any of those kinds of things within the game. And that's how you approach the puzzle is basically kind of like your own gamification of things.
Yeah. How have you find actually trying to sort of demo this game at shows like Rezzed, and is it kind of tricky, because it's when the scale of it's so sort of vast?
The scale is pretty vast. Most people, thankfully, when you come to a show like Rezzed, they play games, they get a lot of the core mechanics. These are people who know that like you don't shoot a red barrel somewhere because the barrel's going to explode. There are sort of universal gaming tropes out there, and that they kind of embrace it within here. If we want to knock into the RTS, cool, maybe. Yeah, go there. So one of the things that we're talking about is sort of that meta-narrative, and this is what we really like to explain, is the fact that, like, yes, you're doing this thing, but you've been pulled into this world. You are been brought into this world by a group called the Academy, and you're trying to figure out what's going on in the Academy, why the Academy exists as it does, and what it's up to. And so we just saw the RTS from your traditional top-down view, and it plays like a standard RTS. Within this, you're going behind the scenes. So you're going to be interacting with the characters in the game in a way that haven't been done before. So what we've got in our challenge mode is essentially an RTS from a first-person perspective.
Right.
So you have the ability to shift from top-down view into a first-person mode.
Oh, I see.
And then interact with the characters that you've just been clicking on the screen and stuff. And so...
Let's close out the other one. Where'd it go? This guy. Come on. Hold on. Where's that sound coming? It's from the other. There we go.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
All right, and so this is our RTS world, the voxel world that...
So this is what we were just looking at.
This is what we were looking
in
at.
the create mode.
Same map.
Oh, okay.
Same everything else. And then your waves of the undead that he battled as the giant knights before, he needs to take on one-to-one.
Right, so
And so you can see these characters behind the scenes. You'll see them in the coffee break room, or having like a tea break and sitting there and relaxing, and interact with them in an interesting way, because they also don't... Some of them are more aware that they're video game characters, some of them are not.
Oh, okay.
And then what you can do. And so what we've introduced earlier is hacking as a mechanic.
Right.
Hacking as a mechanic is... You can see here, there's code up on the screen, and it sort of speaks back to the editor mode of... He just hacked his way, literally hacked and slashed his way through the first wave of this. The second version of this, because this is a demo, we've given you the code as it is, and this is actually the C# code. Within the game, you're able to write your own code. So if you wanted to make a hack, so we have what we call tweak, mod, and a rev. And so tweak is sort of a light change to their code. So the tweaks that we've got available now are, Eric will cast this one, and it removes health. And so it lessens the health substantially of its victim target. The other one is more of a push that kind of shoves things backwards and does no damage. So that's something that we wrote in there as to manipulate the physics of the health mods.
Right.
Say that you wanted to write something that just made them very small, like we saw the scaling on the knights before. What you can do is actually write the code, cast it, and it will shrink them. And then either you can step on them or you can push them away further because they're lighter. Any kind of imaginative thing that you can come up with.
And do you do that within this
You
mode?
do this, yeah, you can do that within this mode. So in the game itself, not so much the demo, because we are, like you said, kind of it's a bigger game for a press for time experience. On the show floor, we've given these to you. So he's now unlocked a mod. So he can now actually mod the environment a little bit more. This one groups things together and then pops them, which is a much stronger hacking experience. But again, you could go in and say, I want gravity to be localized in this one spot, and then I want all of the mobs to have 0 health, which is what that code did. This next is a...
Turncoat.
Turncoat. Turncoat is a more significant AI shift. This is what we call a rev. This is the highest level of hacking that you do within this particular level, because you're actually changing the AI structure of the mob.
Right.
And so you have to know a little bit more, you have to do that. And so the turncoat will actually have its own enemies fighting itself, and then on your side, which takes a lot more code to do. So it's sort of like that step up.
Sure.
And so Eric's slowly but surely working his way through taking out the mages that keep on summoning the baddies, although they are running away from him, rightfully so. He's played this demo before. So it's this kind of thing that you can go in and do in all of the levels. So in a platformer, you're interacting and playing, and when you play the platformer, you're playing as Capitan Blackclaw. She is a pirate cat who's out trying to collect a bunch of pineapples and fruit and get off the island. Now, behind the scenes, you're having a conversation with her in this first-person view, and it's something entirely different. So this game can become almost anything to anybody, which is a fun experience.
And will it? Do you think people will be pulled through this sort of challenge, this sort of story mode, before they dive into the rest of the game, or
without a doubt, yeah. The story will walk them through those video game components.
Yeah.
So we've talked about like going in and playing. We've talked about modification. We talked about editing and like writing your own code. The story mode is what pulls them through in a compelling way. We envision this more as Eric is actually he's defeated all of the mobs. And so as another example of the scaling mechanic, he can kind of shrink things and grow things as they are. So he's a tiny well in a huge tree. As you shrink things down, their weight and scale and physics changes, so you can actually push them further. But yes, the story will walk people through this particular game. We realize that it is a lot, and it's fun to actually kind of get people from point A to point B. We envision it as being as a game for a service, as a games as a service, so that we will be releasing new content as we go. Right. Even as new genres. So we're going to start with 3 genres out of the gate. That doesn't necessarily mean that we don't come out with like an FPS next or like a football game next.
And would you have new story elements paired with those?
And new story elements that kind of take you behind the scenes, because you have to look at this one game in multiple different angles, all with a bend for multiplayer as well. We want this to be a social experience.
So could you, with the multiplayer, beyond sort of sharing the games you've made, like will there be multiplayer games within it, or like?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, if you were to jump into it, if you created like an RTS with your friends, you could easily then proceed to just go in and like race around with them.
Right.
You could have multiple people out there on the battlefield who are one who is shrinking down the gate so nobody can get through it, while one is protecting him from fighting off mobs.
Right.
And things like that. The multiplayer itself is actually, we're gonna, I guess, kick back into the terminal. The multiplayer itself is being developed as we speak. Everything is being built with that in mind.
Yeah.
The game itself will be coming out on early access on Steam, probably early-ish July.
Okay.
With multiplayer being sometime this fall. And so if you buy in at one price, you get it, and then everything else that comes out for it, whatever price you picked it up on. We're not really necessarily doing a DLC model on this. So if we release it at 15 quid, it's 15 quid, and then like when multiplayer comes out, you get the multiplayer.
It seems like a good fit with the game due to
right.
Kind of grow.
It just can kind of grow and change. Now, as like if the game a year from now is much larger, it might cost a little bit more. But so if you buy it early, then you still have that. We're not going to DLC and monetize each little bit of segment of things.
Well, thank you so much for talking us through the Endless Mission.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much as well.
Incredibly exciting. Be sure to check it out on Steam, and you can follow the guys on Twitter. The Twitter handle of the game is?
@endless_mission.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for joining us.